First contact under fire. The command deck of the Galactic Alliance flagship, Resilient Dawn, shuddered as another volley of Corvin energy torpedoes slammed into its failing shields. Admiral Zara Kesh gripped the edges of the tactical display, her forearms tensed as she watched the battle unfold in the holographic projection before her. "Status report," she demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. Commander Vrel, her second-in-command, a tall Nassarian with metallic skin that reflected the emergency lights in alarming flashes of red, consulted his datapad. "Shields at 23%, Admiral. We've lost the Sentinel and the Arbiter. The Corvin battle group is pressing their advantage in the western quadrant." Zara's upper eyes narrowed while her lower pair scanned the tactical display. The battle for the Aeternium system had been raging for 3 days now. What had begun as a strategic defense of a key hyperspace junction had devolved into a desperate last stand. The Corvin Empire, with their superior numbers and ruthless efficiency, were systematically dismantling the Alliance's carefully constructed defensive line. "Divert power from non-essential systems to shields," she ordered, "and have the valiant and steadfast reposition to cover our flank." The bridge crew moved with practiced precision, but Zara could sense their growing desperation. The Galactic Alliance had been fighting the Corvin for nearly 30 cycles, and in recent years, the tide had turned decidedly against them. The Corvin, with their hive-mind efficiency and single-minded determination to bring order to the galaxy, had been steadily pushing Alliance forces back. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Thrix from the sensor station, his translucent tentacles twitching with agitation, "we're detecting an anomaly at coordinates 27 to 3894. "Corvin reinforcements?" Zara asked, already calculating how quickly they would need to retreat if more enemy vessels joined the battle. "Negative, Admiral. The energy signature doesn't match any known Corvin configuration. I've never seen anything like this." The tactical display shifted focus, zooming in on a section of space just beyond the main battlefield. A swirling vortex of energy had appeared, distorting the very fabric of space-time around it. "Some kind of new Corvin weapon," Commander Vrel suggested, his metallic face unable to show emotion, but the tension in his voice unmistakable. Before Zara could respond, the vortex expanded and then collapsed in on itself, leaving behind a single vessel unlike anything she had ever seen. Where Alliance ships favored elegant organic curves that mimicked the evolutionary designs of their member species, and Corvin vessels were all sharp angles and precise geometric patterns, this new ship defied conventional design philosophy. It resembled nothing so much as a predator from some primitive world, sleek yet powerful, with what appeared to be exposed weapon systems and engine components that glowed with an energy signature off the charts. The vessel was smaller than the Alliance's heavy cruisers, but somehow projected a sense of barely contained power. "Hail them," Zara ordered, her forehands instinctively moving to straighten her uniform. First contact protocols demanded diplomatic engagement, even in the middle of a battle. "Admiral," Lieutenant Thrix called out, his voice rising with alarm, "3 Corvin destroyers are breaking formation and moving to intercept the unknown vessel." Zara watched the tactical display with mounting concern. The Corvin never hesitated to eliminate potential threats or witnesses to their operations. The unknown vessel was about to receive a deadly welcome to the conflict. "Warn them," she ordered. "Tell them to raise shields immediately." But before the communication could be sent, the Corvin destroyers opened fire, unleashing a barrage of energy weapons that would have crippled an Alliance cruiser. The unknown vessel made no attempt to evade. Instead, as the Corvin weapons fire approached, something extraordinary happened. The energy beams and torpedoes seemed to slow and then disperse around the hull of the ship, like water flowing around a stone. "What in the 7 moons?" Commander Vrel whispered. The unknown vessel's response was immediate and devastating. Pinpoints of light flickered across its hull, and then beams of concentrated energy, far more precise than anything in the Alliance arsenal, lanced out toward the Corvin destroyers. The first beam struck the lead destroyer's propulsion system, causing it to spin helplessly. The second targeted the weapons array of the second destroyer, leaving it defenseless. The third beam somehow passed through the shields of the third destroyer, as if they weren't there, disabling its command deck without destroying the vessel. In less than 10 seconds, 3 Corvin destroyers had been neutralized without being destroyed. The command deck of the Resilient Dawn fell silent as everyone stared at the display in disbelief. "Admiral," Lieutenant Thrix broke the silence. "We're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel. They're broadcasting on all Alliance frequencies." "Put it through," Zara ordered, her mind racing with the implications of what they had just witnessed. The main view screen flickered, and Zara found herself face to face with a species she had never encountered before. The being had a peculiar appearance, bipedal with only 2 arms, covered in what appeared to be synthetic material rather than natural armor or exoskeleton. Its skin was a pinkish tan color, and it had a tuft of dark fibrous material on the top of its head. Most striking were its eyes, just 2 of them, set in a flat face, yet somehow conveying a depth of intelligence that made Zara straighten her posture. "This is Captain Nathan Reed of the Earth vessel Defiance." The being spoke in perfect galactic standard, its voice resonating with a confidence that seemed almost out of place given the circumstances. "We apologize for the unexpected arrival, but it seems we've dropped into quite the situation. Perhaps we could be of assistance." Zara found her voice after a moment of shock. "This is Admiral Zara Kesh of the Galactic Alliance flagship Resilient Dawn. Your assistance would be appreciated, Captain Reed. Though I must inform you that you've inserted yourself into a conflict that has been ongoing for decades." The human's mouth curved upward at the edges in what Zara would later learn was called a smile. "Sometimes a fresh perspective is exactly what's needed. Admiral, the Corvin fleet is regrouping for another assault on your position. With your permission, we'd like to demonstrate a few more capabilities that might convince them to reconsider." Before Zara could respond, the tactical display lit up with warnings. The main Corvin battle group had noticed the fate of their destroyers and were now reorienting toward both the Alliance flagship and the human vessel. "Incoming transmission from the Corvin command ship," Lieutenant Thrix announced. The view screen split, showing both Captain Reed and the imposing figure of Corvin's Supreme Commander Drakath. Like all Corvin, Drakath's exoskeleton was a deep obsidian, with glowing red sensory nodes where eyes would be on most species. The Corvin's mandibles clicked ominously before he spoke. "Unknown vessel." Drakath's synthetic translator rendered his clicks and hisses into galactic standard. "You have interfered in Imperial operations. You will power down your systems and prepare to be boarded, or you will be destroyed." Captain Reed's expression remained unchanged, that slight curve still present on his lips. "Supreme Commander, I presume. I'm afraid we'll have to decline your generous offer. Instead, let me make a counter-proposal. Withdraw your forces from this system, or we will be forced to demonstrate why that would be in your best interest." The audacity of the human's response left Zara momentarily speechless. No one spoke to the Corvin like that, especially not a single ship facing a battle group of 20 vessels. Drakath's sensory nodes flashed brighter, a sign of Corvin rage. "You have made your choice. Prepare to." The transmission cut off abruptly as the Corvin battle group surged forward, weapons charging. "Captain Reed," Zara began, concern evident in her voice, "I appreciate your intervention, but you should withdraw. Even with your impressive technology, you cannot hope to." "Admiral," Captain Reed interrupted gently, "perhaps you should order your fleet to pull back to a safe distance. Things are about to get a bit unconventional." Something in the human's tone made Zara comply. She quickly ordered the Alliance vessels to regroup around the Resilient Dawn and establish a defensive formation at a distance from both the human vessel and the approaching Corvin. What happened next would change the course of the war forever. The Defiance accelerated toward the Corvin battle group, seemingly on a suicide run. Then, as the Corvin opened fire, the human vessel vanished. No, not vanished, Zara realized. It had somehow split into multiple identical vessels, each moving in a different direction. One moment there was a single ship, the next there were 20 identical copies, each selecting a Corvin vessel as its target. Impossible, Commander Vrel breathed. That defies every law of physics we understand. The copies of the Defiance weaved through the Corvin formation with impossible agility. Where the Corvin relied on overwhelming firepower and rigid formations, the human vessels displayed a creativity in their movements that bordered on artistic. They didn't just evade Corvin fire. They used it to their advantage, somehow redirecting energy beams back toward their sources. Within minutes, the mighty Corvin battle group was in disarray. Ships tumbled helplessly through space, their systems offline. Others found themselves enclosed in strange energy fields that seemed to isolate them from normal spacetime. Not a single Corvin vessel had been destroyed, but none remained combat effective. As suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The multiple copies of the Defiance merged back into a single vessel, which then calmly returned to its position near the Resilient Dawn. The view screen activated again, showing Captain Reed, who looked exactly as he had before, not a hair out of place, despite the impossible feat his vessel had just accomplished. "Admiral Kesh," he said, his voice carrying the same casual confidence, "I believe we may have created an opportunity for dialogue. The Corvin vessels have been temporarily disabled, not destroyed. Their life support systems remain functional, but their weapons, engines, and communications will require significant repairs." Zara found herself struggling to process what she had just witnessed. "Captain Reed, who are you? Where do you come from? And how is your technology so advanced?" The human's expression softened. "We are humans, from Earth. As for the rest, perhaps that's a conversation best had in person. Would you be willing to receive a delegation aboard your vessel, Admiral? I believe we have much to discuss about the future of this conflict." Zara looked at Commander Vrel, who gave the Nessarian equivalent of a shrug, a ripple of his metallic skin that reflected light in a specific pattern. "We would be honored, Captain Reed," Zara replied, making a decision that would alter the course of galactic history. "And I believe I speak for the entire Alliance when I say that we are very interested in learning more about humanity." The human's smile widened. "Excellent. And Admiral, this is just the beginning of what humanity can offer to the galaxy." As the transmission ended, Zara gazed out at the disabled Corvin fleet and the single human vessel that had accomplished what an entire Alliance battle group could not. "Commander," she said quietly to Vrel, "I believe everything is about to change." Vrel's metallic skin rippled with agreement. "Indeed, Admiral. The question is, for better or worse?" Zara's 4 eyes remained fixed on the human ship. "We're about to find out." The human advantage. The conference room aboard the Resilient Dawn was designed to accommodate the diverse physiologies of the dozen species that made up the Galactic Alliance. The gravity was set to a universal standard, the temperature and atmospheric composition carefully balanced to ensure comfort for all delegates. Despite these preparations, it was the humans who seemed most at ease. Captain Nathan Reed sat across from Admiral Zara Kesh, his posture relaxed yet alert. Behind him stood 2 other humans, Commander Sophia Chen, his tactical officer, and Dr. Marcus Williams, who had been introduced as their scientific liaison. "To properly understand humanity's capabilities," Reed was saying, "you need to understand our isolation." The holographic display in the center of the table showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. A small section near one of the spiral arms was highlighted in red. "This region of space," Dr. Williams explained, his voice carrying the measured cadence of an educator, "was enclosed in what we now know was a naturally occurring quantum isolation field. For approximately 50,000 years, Earth and its surrounding systems were essentially cut off from the rest of the galaxy." Commander Vrel leaned forward, his metallic skin catching the light from the hologram. "A natural phenomenon. We have no record of such an occurrence." "Because you couldn't detect it from the outside," Commander Chen interjected. Her short black hair framed a face that remained perfectly composed as she spoke. The field bent light and other signals around itself. To the rest of the galaxy, that entire region simply appeared to be empty space. Admiral Kesh's upper eyes blinked in surprise while her lower pair remained fixed on the humans. 50,000 years of isolation, while the rest of us have been engaged in interstellar politics and warfare for millennia. Captain Reed nodded. When the quantum field began to dissipate approximately 70 years ago, we detected our first signals from beyond our solar system. By then, humanity had already colonized our home system and developed significant technological capabilities. But this level of advancement, objected Grand Strategist Sifos, the insectoid representative from the Alliance War Council, it defies explanation. You claim your species only achieved faster than light travel 40 years ago, yet your technology appears centuries beyond our own. Reed exchanged glances with his companions before responding. Humanity evolved under unique circumstances, Grand Strategist. While isolated, we faced no external threats, but we nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times through internal conflicts. This created a particular evolutionary pressure. We evolved to compete with ourselves, Dr. Williams clarified. Where most spacefaring species develop technology to overcome natural limitations or external threats, humans develop technology primarily to gain advantages over other humans. A murmur ran through the Alliance representatives. The concept seemed almost heretical to species that had evolved through cooperation or unified against external threats. When we discovered we weren't alone in the universe, Reed continued, we recognized a simple truth. We were late to a very old game. The only way to ensure our survival was to approach problems differently than everyone else had for the past few thousand years. Admiral Kesh leaned forward, all four eyes focused intently on Reed. Different how, exactly? You build consensus, Commander Chen replied. We build options. Your technological development follows established patterns, building upon what came before. She paused, searching for the right words. We tend to throw out the rulebook regularly. As if to punctuate her statement, the conference room's emergency alert system activated. Lieutenant Thrix's voice came through the communication system, his usual calm replaced by urgency. Admiral Kesh, sensors have detected multiple Corvin vessels entering the system. It appears to be their third fleet. Zara rose immediately. How many? 47 vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts. The room fell silent. Even with the disabled Corvin battle group from the previous engagement, the Alliance forces in the Aeternium system were in no condition to face the Corvin Third Fleet. Everyone knew what this meant. The Corvin had escalated, committing one of their premier fleets to ensure the human vessel would not escape. They're afraid, Captain Reed said quietly, drawing everyone's attention. They don't understand what they saw, but they know it threatens their entire strategic position in the galaxy. With respect, Captain, Grand Strategist Sifos chittered, this is now beyond a simple demonstration. The Third Fleet includes some of the most advanced vessels in Corvin space. If your ship is captured, it won't be. Reed interrupted, rising to his feet. Admiral Kesh, with your permission, we'd like to coordinate a joint response. I believe it's time to demonstrate another aspect of humanity that might surprise our Corvin friends. Zara hesitated only briefly before nodding. The bridge is this way, Captain. As they moved through the corridors of the Resilient Dawn, Zara found herself studying the humans with newfound curiosity. They moved with a fluid grace that belied their seemingly fragile physiology. There was no exoskeleton protecting them, no natural armor or redundant organ systems, like most spacefaring species had evolved. Yet they carried themselves with a confidence that bordered on recklessness. You're wondering how we survive, Commander Chen said quietly, falling into step beside Zara. Our bodies seem so vulnerable compared to yours. Zara's upper eyes blinked in surprise at having her thoughts read so easily. I mean no offense, but yes. Most species that achieve interstellar travel have evolved significant physical adaptations. Chen's lips curved in that human expression. A smile. We adapted in different ways. Our advantage isn't in our bodies, Admiral. It's in here. She tapped the side of her head. Humans aren't stronger or naturally more durable than most species, but we might be the most stubborn beings in the galaxy. They reached the bridge, where the tactical display showed the approaching Corvan fleet. The massive dreadnoughts led the formation, their distinctive cross-diamond shape unmistakable even at a distance. Captain Reed stepped up to the display, studying it with the calm assessment of a seasoned commander. "How are your ships positioned, Admiral?" Zara gestured to the hologram, highlighting the Alliance vessels. "We've established a defensive perimeter around the hyperspace junction. Most of our ships have sustained damage from the previous engagement, but our shields and weapons are operational." Reed nodded thoughtfully. "And the disabled Corvan vessels from our earlier encounter?" "Adrift in Sector 7. Commander Vrel reported. "We've dispatched recovery vessels to secure survivors, as per Alliance protocols." "I'd recommend recalling those vessels immediately," Reed said, his tone suddenly sharp. When Zara looked at him questioningly, he pointed to the tactical display. "The Corvan are splitting their formation. That's not a standard attack pattern." Dr. Williams stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "They're setting up a pincer movement, but not aimed at your fleet. They're targeting the disabled vessels." "They would destroy their own?" Zara asked, shocked despite her years of experience fighting the Corvan. "Not destroy," Commander Chen corrected grimly. "They're going to use them as bait, if your recovery vessels are there when they arrive." Zara immediately issued orders to recall the recovery operation. As the Alliance vessels broke away from the disabled Corvan ships, the tactical display confirmed the humans' prediction. The Corvan Third Fleet was indeed executing a complex maneuver designed to trap any vessels attempting to assist their disabled counterparts. "How did you know?" Commander Vrel asked, genuine curiosity in his normally stoic voice. "Pattern recognition," Reed replied. "Humans excel at spotting anomalies and predicting behaviors based on incomplete information. It's how we survived as hunters before we developed agriculture." The tactical officer reported that the Corvan fleet had detected the retreat of the Alliance recovery vessels and was now reorienting toward the main Alliance position. "They'll be in weapons range in 7 minutes, the officer concluded. Captain Reed turned to Zara. "Admiral, with your permission, the Defiance would like to take point position in the coming engagement." Zara considered the request. Standard Alliance protocol would never place an unknown, unproven vessel at the forefront of a defensive line. But then again, there was nothing standard about the humans or their ship. "Permission granted, Captain Reed. What support do you need from Alliance vessels?" Reed's expression shifted subtly, becoming more focused, almost predatory. "Have your ships ready to exploit any openings we create. And Admiral, I recommend you observe closely. What you're about to see might change your understanding of what's possible in space warfare." The Defiance detached from the Resilient Dawn's docking bay and moved toward the approaching Corvan fleet with deliberate purpose. To Zara's surprise, the human vessel was running with minimal energy signatures, almost appearing disabled itself. "What are they doing?" Grand Strategist Siphos demanded, having joined them on the bridge. "They're presenting themselves as an easy target." "They're baiting the trap," Commander Vrel realized, a note of appreciation in his synthetic voice, "turning the Corvan strategy against them." Sure enough, the lead elements of the Corvan fleet accelerated toward the seemingly vulnerable human vessel. The 3 massive dreadnoughts held position, but 12 destroyers and cruisers broke formation, moving to quickly neutralize the threat that had so easily dispatched their comrades in the previous engagement. "Captain Reed," Zora communicated, concern evident in her voice, "the vessels approaching your position are equipped with quantum disruption fields. They're designed specifically to counter unusual energy signatures like those your ship displayed earlier." "Thank you for the information, Admiral," Reed's calm voice replied. "That's exactly what we were counting on." As the Corvan vessels closed to optimal firing range, The Defiant suddenly flared with energy. Not the same signature as before, but something entirely different. Where previously the human ship had projected power through visible energy weapons, now it seemed to be emitting nothing at all. Yet the effect on the approaching Corvin vessels was immediate and bewildering. They began to drift out of formation, their precise movements becoming erratic. Several collided with each other, though without causing significant damage. "What's happening?" Zara demanded. "Cognitive disruption field." Commander Chen's voice came through the communication system. "Non-harmful but extremely effective against hive mind species like the Corvin. We're essentially introducing noise into their collective consciousness." The tactical display updated, showing the confused Corvin vessels now effectively neutralized without a single shot being fired. The main Corvin fleet, including the 3 dreadnoughts, had halted their advance, clearly reassessing the situation. "Now, Admiral," Reed's voice carried an edge of excitement, "while they're recalibrating their approach, hit them with everything you've got, focused on the flagship's propulsion systems." Zara didn't hesitate. "All vessels, concentrate fire on the lead dreadnought's engine arrays. Maximum yield." The Alliance fleet responded with a coordinated barrage that under normal circumstances would have been easily deflected by the dreadnought's advanced shields. But the Corvin vessels seemed sluggish in their response, their normally impeccable defensive coordination fractured by whatever the humans had done. The combined Alliance firepower struck the dreadnought's shields at precisely the same moment. For a second, it seemed the shields would hold, then they collapsed spectacularly, allowing several shots to impact directly on the massive vessel's propulsion systems. The dreadnought didn't explode, but its main engines went dark. It began to drift, its secondary systems struggling to maintain position. "How?" Grand Strategist Siphos began, then fell silent, mandibles clicking in astonishment. The cognitive disruption affected their shield harmonization. Reed explained, the Defiance now moving to rejoin the Alliance formation. A temporarily divided mind cannot maintain the precise calculations needed for energy distribution. Before Zara could respond, the sensor officer called out, "Admiral, the remaining Corvin vessels are retreating. They're abandoning the damaged dreadnought." The bridge fell silent as everyone watched the tactical display confirm this unprecedented development. The Corvin never retreated. They never abandoned their vessels or their personnel. It was one of the most fundamental aspects of their hive mind psychology. The collective persisted even when individual components were lost. "They're adapting," Captain Reed said, his voice now serious. "Learning. The next encounter will be different. They'll develop countermeasures." Zara turned to face the human as he re-entered the bridge of the Resilient Dawn. "You sound almost concerned, Captain. Your vessel just effectively neutralized a Corvin fleet that outnumbered you 40-1. Reed exchanged glances with Commander Chen and Dr. Williams before responding. "Admiral, what you've witnessed today represents only a fraction of humanity's capabilities. But more importantly, it represents a way of thinking that the Corvin have never encountered before." "And that concerns you?" Commander Farrell asked. "It should concern all of us," Reed replied. "Because the Corvin will now be forced to evolve beyond their predictable patterns. They'll become more dangerous, more creative. It's the nature of conflict. It drives adaptation." Admiral Kesh studied the human captain carefully. There was something in his expression that she hadn't noticed before, a weariness behind the confidence, a knowledge that seemed to extend beyond his apparent years. "You've seen this before," she realized. "On Earth, during your isolation." Reed nodded slowly. "Humanity nearly destroyed itself multiple times through conflict. Each time, we survived by evolving, not physically, but mentally, by changing how we think, how we approach problems. The Corvin are about to begin that journey, forced upon them by our intervention." Grand Strategist Siphos stepped forward, his compound eyes reflecting the light of the tactical display. "Then perhaps it's time you shared more of your knowledge with the Alliance, Captain Reed. If the Corvin are evolving, we must evolve faster." The human captain's expression shifted to that now familiar smile, but this time it carried a hint of caution. That grand strategist is exactly why I'm concerned. Not everyone is ready for how humans think. We're ready, Zara stated firmly. The Alliance has been losing this war for too long. Show us what humanity can offer. Reed held her gaze for a long moment before nodding. Very well, Admiral. Let's begin with how we approach impossible situations, like the one we're about to face when the Corvin return with their entire fleet. Turning the tide. The Alliance War Council chamber aboard the station Unity was in an uproar. Representatives from 17 different species argued vehemently, their various appendages gesticulating in species-specific expressions of outrage, disbelief, or support. At the center of the storm stood Captain Nathan Reed, seemingly unperturbed by the chaos his proposal had created. It is absolutely unprecedented, bellowed Councillor Drav, his massive rhinoceros-like form towering over most of the other representatives. You're suggesting we abandon defensive positions that have taken decades to establish. Not abandon, Reed corrected calmly. Repurpose. 3 weeks had passed since the human vessel Defiance had emerged in the Eternium system and changed the course of the war. In that time, the Alliance had recorded 17 separate engagements with Corvin forces, each demonstrating the truth of Reed's prediction. The Corvin were adapting, becoming less predictable, more dangerous. Admiral Zara Kesh stood beside the human captain, her 4 arms clasped behind her back in a formal posture. Council members, I understand your concerns. Captain Reed's strategy contradicts generations of Alliance military doctrine, but I have personally witnessed the effectiveness of human tactical thinking. Effectiveness, snorted Grand Admiral Tholis, the nominal head of Alliance military forces. The Corvin have launched more aggressive campaigns in the past 3 weeks than in the previous 2 years. We've lost control of the various sector and the mining colonies in the Thorn Belt. Because they're afraid. Commander Chen interjected from her position beside Reed. They're committing resources they can't afford to lose because they recognize that humanity represents an existential threat to their entire mode of operation. The chamber quieted somewhat as the various representatives considered this perspective. Explain again, requested Councillor Elar, her transparent body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that indicated deep thought. Exactly what you are proposing, Captain Reed. Reed stepped forward, activating the holographic display in the center of the chamber. A 3-dimensional map of Alliance and Corvin space appeared, with current military positions highlighted. The Corvin have always relied on predictability, both ours and theirs, Reed began. Their hive mind allows for perfect coordination, but limits creativity. They expect us to defend key positions, to prioritize populated worlds and strategic resources, because that's what any rational opponent would do. He gestured, and the map shifted, showing a very different configuration of Alliance forces. I'm proposing we do the irrational. We abandon our current defensive line entirely and instead establish a new frontier. His finger indicated a seemingly arbitrary position in space, cutting directly through what the Corvin considers secured territory. That position has no strategic value, protested Grand Admiral Tholis. There are no hyperspace junctions, no habitable worlds, no resources worth defending. Exactly, Reed smiled. Which is why the Corvin have minimal defenses there. They can't conceive of us choosing to fight where there's nothing worth fighting for. Dr. Williams stepped forward, adding to Reed's explanation. The Corvin think linearly. They expand, secure, then expand again. Their entire strategic doctrine is based on resource acquisition and territorial control. By establishing a presence where they see no value, we force them to devote resources to an area they've already classified as secured with minimal investment. The council chamber erupted again, representatives arguing the merits and risks of such an unorthodox approach. Admiral Kesh watched the humans carefully during this exchange. They seemed entirely comfortable with the discord, even expectant of it. It struck her that perhaps this was another aspect of human nature. They didn't just tolerate disagreement, They seemed to view it as productive. Enough, she finally intervened, her authoritative voice cutting through the clamor. We've spent 3 cycles debating while the Corvin continue to press their advantage. Captain Reed's strategy may be unconventional, but conventional approaches have led us to the brink of defeat. Grand Admiral Tholis fixed his compound eyes on Kesh. You're asking us to commit over half our remaining fleet to a strategy that defies all established military wisdom, based on the word of a species we encountered less than a month ago. No, Kesh corrected. I'm asking you to recognize that established military wisdom has failed us. The Alliance has been losing this war since before I was born. Perhaps it's time we tried something that the Corvin won't expect, because we wouldn't expect it either. The chamber fell silent for a long moment before Counselor Elar spoke again. Captain Reed, what assurances can you offer that this strategy will succeed? Reed's expression grew serious. None, Counselor. War offers no guarantees. What I can promise is that continuing your current strategy guarantees defeat. The Corvin are already adapting to our initial interventions. They've begun implementing countermeasures against the technologies we demonstrated in our first engagements. He paused, making eye contact with several council members before continuing. But humanity's advantage isn't our technology, it's our approach to problem solving. We evolved to outthink predators and each other. We survived millennia of internal conflicts that should have destroyed us because we continually reinvent our approach when faced with failure. Commander Chen added, the Corvin can adapt their tactics, but they cannot fundamentally change their nature. At least not quickly. Their hive mind provides incredible coordination, but limits divergent thinking. Humans are the opposite. We thrive on divergent thinking, on approaching problems from unexpected angles. Grand Strategist Sifos, who had remained silent throughout most of the debate, finally spoke. I have reviewed the tactical data from all 17 engagements involving the human vessel Defiance. In each case, they employed different methodologies, different weapon systems, different approaches. No pattern, no predictability. The insectoid turned to face the council. I support Captain Reed's proposal. This endorsement from the normally cautious Grand Strategist shifted the mood in the chamber. One by one, the council members began to signal their reluctant agreement. Grand Admiral Tholis was the last to concede. Very well. We will implement this human strategy. But Captain Reed, you will accompany the fleet personally. If this fails, you will share in the consequences. Reed nodded solemnly. I would have it no other way, Admiral. 3 days later, the largest Alliance fleet assembled in nearly a decade dropped out of hyperspace in a region of space the Corvin had designated as Sector 117, a sparse area containing nothing but a few uninhabitable planets and dormant mining operations that had been exhausted decades earlier. Admiral Kesh stood on the bridge of the Resilient Dawn, surveying the tactical display as the Alliance fleet took up positions in what amounted to empty space. The human vessel Defiance held position at the center of the formation, seemingly unremarkable compared to the massive Alliance capital ships, yet now the focal point of their entire strategy. All vessels report ready, Admiral, Commander Vrel announced, his metallic skin reflecting the blue glow of the tactical displays. And now we wait, Zara stated, her 4 eyes scanning the starfield beyond the viewport. Captain Reed stood beside her, hands clasped behind his back. Not for long. The Corvin monitoring stations in this sector will have detected our arrival. Their response will be immediate. To defend nothing. Zara questioned, still not entirely convinced despite her public support of the plan. Reed's lips curved in that now familiar human expression. From their perspective, we must have a reason for being here. Something they've overlooked, some value they've failed to identify. The possibility that we're here precisely because there is nothing of value is incomprehensible to their collective mind. Less than 6 hours later, Reed's prediction proved accurate. The sensors detected multiple hyperspace signatures as a Corvin rapid response fleet arrived, taking up positions opposite the Alliance formation. 17 vessels, Commander Vrel reported, primarily light cruisers and destroyers. Reed nodded, unsurprised. A probing force. They're trying to determine our objective before committing their heavier assets. The Corvin vessels maintained their distance, seemingly as confused by the Alliance's presence as Zara had initially been by Reed's strategy. No communication attempts, Lieutenant Thrix reported from the communication station. They appear to be scanning the region extensively, looking for what we know that they don't, Reed explained, watching the tactical display with evident satisfaction. Phase 1 complete. Now for Phase 2. At Reed's command, the Alliance fleet began a carefully choreographed series of maneuvers. Ships broke formation, appearing to establish perimeters around empty sections of space. Others performed sensor sweeps of nearby uninhabitable planets. The Defiance itself approached a particularly barren moon and deployed what appeared to be survey equipment. The Corvin response was predictable. They mirrored the Alliance movements, spreading their forces to observe these mysterious activities. They're thinning their formation, Zara noted, beginning to understand Reed's intent. And reporting everything back to their command structure, Reed added. Every moment we maintain this charade, more Corvin resources are being redirected to determine what value we've discovered in this worthless sector. Over the next 2 days, a bizarre dance continued. More Corvin vessels arrived, including 2 dreadnoughts, their forces now outnumbering the Alliance fleet nearly 2 to 1. Yet they made no aggressive moves, instead continuing to observe and mirror the Alliance's seemingly purposeful, but ultimately meaningless activities. Incoming transmission from Corvin Command, Lieutenant Thrix announced on the 3rd day. They're requesting parley. The bridge crew exchanged shocked glances. In 30 years of conflict, the Corvin had never once requested diplomatic communication. They issued demands or ultimatums, but never engaged in dialogue. And there it is, Reed said quietly, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. The greatest fear of any hive mind species, the possibility that they've missed something fundamental that others perceive clearly. Accept the transmission, Zara ordered, her upper eyes blinking rapidly in astonishment. The main view screen activated, showing Supreme Commander Drakath once again. The Corvin leader's mandibles were unnaturally still, a sign of intense concentration. Admiral Kesh, the synthetic translator, rendered Drakath's clicks and hisses. Your presence in this sector is perplexing. Is it? Zara replied, following the script Reed had prepared. I would have thought it obvious why we've committed such significant resources to Sector 117. The Corvin's sensory nodes pulsed with agitation. There are no strategic assets in this region. Our surveys have been comprehensive. Indeed. Zara allowed her head to tilt slightly, a gesture of patronizing disbelief. Perhaps the Corvin Dominion's understanding of strategic value differs from ours. Or perhaps she let the sentence hang deliberately incomplete. Drakath's sensory nodes flashed brighter. You have aligned yourselves with the humans. Their vessel continues to perform activities we cannot interpret at coordinates that hold no significance. No significance that you're aware of, Reed interjected, stepping into view. Commander Drakath, perhaps it's time you consider that your understanding of this region of space might be incomplete. The Corvin leader's mandibles clicked rapidly in what the Alliance officers recognized as agitation. What have you discovered? What resource or strategic advantage does this sector contain that justifies this level of commitment? Reed smiled enigmatically. I think you know we can't answer that question, Commander. But consider this. While your fleet observes our activities here, what might be happening elsewhere in Corvin space? What opportunities might arise when resources are diverted to solve a puzzle with no solution? Before Drakath could respond, the transmission was abruptly cut from the Corvin side. They're increasing scan intensity, the sensor officer reported. All Corvin vessels are now at maximum alert status. Reed turned to Admiral Kesh, and now, Admiral, for Phase 3. Zara nodded, having been briefed on the full strategy. All vessels, prepare for immediate hyperspace jump to coordinates Theta 9. Execute on my mark. The Alliance fleet, which had spent days establishing an elaborate deception in Sector 117, suddenly and simultaneously jumped to hyperspace, leaving the confused Corvin forces behind. When they emerged from hyperspace, they found themselves at the edge of the Corvin home system, the heart of their empire, now with minimal defenses as ships had been diverted to Sector 117 and other fronts. No defensive grid activation, Commander Vrel reported, surprise evident in his normally controlled voice. They haven't detected us yet. Because they never imagined we would strike here, Reed explained. Their home system's defenses have been designed to repel a conventional invasion force, not a strategic strike. They're looking outward, not inward. The human turned to Zara. Admiral, you have approximately 20 minutes before they realize what's happened and begin recalling their fleets. I suggest we make the most of it. Zara didn't hesitate. All vessels, target the orbital shipyards and command stations. Weapons free. What followed was the most decisive 20 minutes of the 30-year conflict. The Alliance fleet struck with precision and overwhelming force, targeting infrastructure rather than population centers. The Defiance led a specialized strike team against the Corvin's primary communication hub, employing yet another previously unseen technology that effectively severed the connections between the Corvin hive mind segments across their empire. By the time the first Corvin defensive vessels began arriving from nearby systems, the damage was done. Their shipbuilding capacity had been reduced by 80%, their command structure fractured, and most importantly, their sense of invulnerability shattered. Corvin vessels entering weapons range, the tactical officer reported as the inevitable counterattack began. All ships, prepare for Phase 4, Zara ordered, looking to Reed for confirmation. The human captain nodded. The Defiance will take point position. What the Corvin expected was a fighting retreat, the Alliance fleet attempting to escape after their surprise attack. What they encountered instead was yet another human innovation. The Defiance moved to the forefront of the Alliance formation and activated a device that Reed had called a quantum fold generator. The space around the fleet shimmered as though reality itself was being gently bent. Fold established. Commander Chen reported from the Defiance. All Alliance vessels are within the field perimeter. What exactly will this do? Zara asked, watching as approaching Corvin vessels fired upon the Alliance fleet, only to have their weapons dissipate harmlessly against the shimmering field. It creates a temporary pocket of space-time that exists slightly out of phase with normal reality. Reed explained, we can see them, but their weapons can't affect us. It will give us exactly 7 minutes to execute a controlled withdrawal without taking casualties. 7 minutes. Zara's upper eyes blinked in surprise. That's remarkably precise. Reed's expression turned solemn. Human technology often operates at the boundaries of what's physically possible, Admiral. Precision is essential when pushing those boundaries. 7 minutes, not a second more. The Alliance fleet began its withdrawal, protected by the Defiance's quantum field as enraged Corvin vessels fired uselessly at them. 7 minutes later, exactly as Reed had predicted, the field collapsed just as the last Alliance ship jumped to hyperspace. 3 weeks after the strike on the Corvin home system, representatives of the Corvin Dominion met with the Galactic Alliance aboard the station Unity to discuss armistice terms. The once unthinkable idea of the Corvin seeking peace had become reality. Admiral Zarakesh stood in the observation lounge, watching as the Corvin delegation departed in their shuttle. Captain Reed joined her, his expression thoughtful. They accepted almost all our terms, Zara noted, still somewhat disbelieving. Territorial concessions, demilitarized zones, even third-party monitoring of their military activities. They had little choice, Reed replied. We demonstrated that their fundamental approach to warfare had a critical vulnerability. Imagination. Nothing frightens a hive mind species more than the realization that they cannot anticipate what comes next. Zara turned to face the human. You knew this would happen, didn't you? From the moment your ship arrived in our space, You understood the psychological impact humanity would have on the Corvin. Reed considered this for a moment before responding. We suspected. Humanity has encountered hive mind systems before, though not on an interstellar scale. They excel at optimization within known parameters, but struggle with genuine innovation. And humans? Zara asked. We're almost the opposite, Reed smiled. Terrible at perfect coordination, but remarkably good at thinking beyond established boundaries. It makes us dangerous, unpredictable. And valuable allies, Zara added. Reed's expression grew more serious. That remains to be seen, Admiral. Humanity's emergence from isolation will change the galaxy in ways neither of us can fully predict. The Corvin are just the beginning. Zara's 4 eyes studied the human captain carefully. You're concerned about how the Alliance will react to humanity in the long term. Wouldn't you be? Reed asked. We just helped end a 30-year conflict in less than a month by introducing concepts and technologies that your scientists considered either impossible or centuries beyond current capabilities. You think we'll fear you, Zara realized. Reed nodded slowly. History suggests it's a reasonable concern. Fear often follows rapid change, even positive change. Zara considered this, then made a decision that would shape the future of galactic politics. Captain Reed, I would like to formally invite Earth to send representatives to the Alliance Council, not as observers or associates, but as full members. The human's expression registered genuine surprise. That's unprecedented, Admiral. New species typically spend decades as probationary members before being granted full council privileges. Unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures, Zara replied, echoing Reed's own philosophy. Humanity has demonstrated not just advanced technology, but a different way of thinking. The Alliance needs that perspective if we're to evolve beyond this conflict. Reed extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. On behalf of Earth, I accept your invitation, Admiral Kesh, and I look forward to seeing how our species can learn from each other. As they shook hands, Zora couldn't help but feel that the galaxy had crossed a threshold from which there would be no return. The arrival of a single human warship had forever changed the battlefield of galactic politics, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon wasn't destructive force, but the simple ability to think differently.